The 20th century was unlike any other in human history, a time when the world witnessed both unimaginable destruction and astonishing innovation. From the rolling plains of Europe to the deserts of North Africa, from the skies above the Pacific to the strategic waterways of the Middle East, nations tested the limits of human ingenuity and courage. Wars were no longer fought solely with swords and muskets. They had transformed into complex theaters of mechanized armies, rapid-firing artillery, and aircraft that could strike with pinpoint accuracy. The pace of technological advancement was staggering, reshaping not only how wars were fought but also how entire societies prepared for and endured them. In this turbulent era, military leaders emerged who would forever change the art of warfare. They were not just commanding armies, they were crafting strategies that relied on speed, surprise, and overwhelming force. Some called it shock and awe, a tactic designed to seize the initiative, paralyze the enemy's decision-making, and force outcomes in mere days rather than months or years. It was a high-stakes game where brilliance, timing, and audacity could tip the balance of power in an instant. Imagine the tension on a quiet morning, when the roar of engines and the hum of aircraft signaled the opening of a battle that would shock the world. Entire armies, equipped with the latest technology, could be rendered helpless in hours through clever planning and precise execution. In the deserts of the Middle East, in the jungles of Southeast Asia, and across the oceans in the Pacific, such moments defined the fates of nations. Leaders who mastered these tactics became legends not only for their victories, but for the lessons they left behind on leadership, decision-making, and the human cost of conflict. Today, we will journey into that world. We will explore one of the most remarkable conflicts of the 20th century, the Six-Day War, where Israel faced a coalition of neighboring Arab nations and achieved a stunning victory through daring strategy and decisive action. But this story is not just about borders or military might, it is about the minds behind the maneuvers, the risks they took, and the legacy they left for generations to come. Through their stories, we can understand the profound impact of strategy, preparation, and courage in shaping history. If you love exploring history and uncovering the strategies that changed the world, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Join us as we dive deep into the events, decisions, and people who redefined what it means to be a military mastermind. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss an episode, because history, when told well, is not just about the past, it is a guide for understanding the present and imagining the future. Buckle up, because this journey through the sands, skis, and strategies of the 20th century is about to begin, and you won't want to miss a single moment. In the annals of modern warfare, few concepts have shaped battles as profoundly as the strategy known as rapid dominance, often described in contemporary terms as shock and awe. It is a method of warfare that relies not merely on the accumulation of weapons or the size of an army, but on the precise orchestration of overwhelming power in a way that leaves the adversary bewildered, disoriented, and unable to respond effectively. Imagine standing on a battlefield where the horizon is suddenly filled with a thunderous roar of advancing forces, where the sky is crossed by aircraft that strike with surgical precision, and where the ground trembles under the weight of mechanized divisions moving in perfect coordination. The purpose is not only to defeat the enemy physically, but to strike at the very core of their will, creating a psychological shock so profound that resistance falters before it even begins. This approach transforms warfare into a high-stakes game of anticipation, where foresight, preparation, and timing are as decisive as the weapons themselves. The story of rapid dominance is inseparable from the leaders who mastered it, men whose vision and audacity altered the course of entire conflicts. Consider the early hours of June 5, 1967, when Israeli forces, under the leadership of Moshe Dayan, launched a preemptive strike against the combined forces of Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. The operation was meticulously planned. Every squadron, every battalion, every element of intelligence had been positioned to execute an overwhelming display of military coordination. Within hours, the skies over Egypt were dominated by Israeli aircraft, and the enemy's capacity to respond was shattered before their troops could even organize a counterattack. The result was a swift, decisive victory that not only changed the territorial landscape but also cemented the idea that speed, surprise, and concentrated force could redefine the rules of engagement. Dayan's brilliance lay not only in his tactical execution, but in his understanding of human psychology, the recognition that a display of overwhelming capability could paralyze decision-making and sow uncertainty among even the most seasoned commanders. The effectiveness of this strategy is not limited to one theater or one leader. Across the deserts of North Africa during World War II, Erwin Rommel demonstrated a similar mastery of overwhelming, rapid strikes. Facing British forces entrenched along vast stretches of desert, Rommel leveraged mobility, intelligence, and concentrated armored assaults to create confusion and disorder among his adversaries. His attacks were not merely physical, they were calculated assaults on the minds of opposing officers, forcing them to react under pressure, often making mistakes that Rommel could exploit. His campaigns in Libya and Egypt showcased how the synchronization of speed, firepower, and unpredictability could allow a numerically inferior force to impose its will on a larger opponent. The psychological impact of seeing units appear from unexpected directions, the suddenness of artillery barrages, and the relentless pace of armored advances contributed as much to Rommel's success as any gun or tank. Similarly, in the Pacific Theater, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto applied the principles of rapid dominance to naval aviation, culminating in the infamous attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941. Yamamoto recognized that Japan could not hope to win a prolonged conflict against the industrial might of the United States. So he conceived an operation designed to deliver a crippling psychological and material blow in a single, dramatic strike. The precision, coordination, and audacity of the attack stunned the American forces, destroying battleships, crippling infrastructure, and sending shockwaves across the nation. The attack exemplified how a single, overwhelming maneuver, if executed with flawless timing, could create a sense of disorientation and vulnerability in an adversary, reshaping strategic calculations far beyond the immediate battlefield. Even in more modern conflicts, the echoes of rapid dominance can be seen in the application of overwhelming force combined with strategic clarity, as exemplified by General Colin Powell during the late 20th century. Drawing lessons from the protracted engagements in Vietnam, Powell emphasized that military action should always be decisive, proportionate, and clearly linked to political objectives. His doctrine called for overwhelming force to ensure victory, rapid engagement to minimize casualties, and public support to maintain legitimacy. In Operation Just Cause in Panama, the United States executed a swift, concentrated campaign designed to neutralize enemy capabilities and secure key political outcomes. The operation demonstrated that the principles of rapid dominance, speed, coordination, and psychological impact remained highly relevant, capable of achieving objectives efficiently while limiting prolonged exposure to conflict. Across centuries and continents, the unifying theme of these examples is that warfare is not merely a contest of numbers or weapons, but a contest of perception, morale, and decision-making under pressure. Rapid dominance is a strategy that leverages every available advantage, technological, tactical, and psychological, to create an overwhelming impression that the enemy cannot ignore or resist. It is a lesson in preparation, foresight, and the careful orchestration of forces. reminding us that the mind and will of an adversary are as crucial as the physical battlefield itself. Leaders who master this approach do not merely win battles. They redefine the nature of engagement, demonstrating that the ability to act decisively, with clarity and concentration, can turn the tide of history in a matter of days rather than months or years. In exploring these stories, from the deserts of North Africa to the skies over the Middle East and the Pacific, one sees a consistent pattern. Those who understand the interplay of speed, force, and psychology are able to achieve results that appear almost impossible, leaving a lasting legacy in military history. Rapid dominance, in its essence, is a testament to human ingenuity in warfare, a demonstration that preparation, audacity, and the ability to project overwhelming power can shape outcomes in ways that pure numbers alone never could. It is a strategy that resonates not only as a historical phenomenon, but as a guiding principle in understanding how wars are fought and how decisive action, when executed with precision and clarity, can create a legacy that endures far beyond the battlefield. The early morning of June 5, 1967, marked a turning point not only for the nation of Israel, but for the balance of power in the Middle East, a region long defined by tension, territorial disputes, and the legacies of colonial boundaries. Under the leadership of Moshe Dayan, a commander whose reputation was forged through decades of conflict, and whose keen understanding of both strategy and psychology set him apart, Israel executed a preemptive strike that would come to define the Six-Day War. The operation was not a reckless gamble but a calculated orchestration of speed, precision, and overwhelming force, embodying the very essence of the rapid dominance strategy that had proven decisive in conflicts around the world. Long before the first jet engines roared over the Sinai, Israeli planners had meticulously mapped every potential threat, every possible countermeasure, and every route of advance, ensuring that the moment the strike began, their forces would move as one, synchronized and unstoppable. As dawn broke over the eastern horizon, the Israeli Air Force surged into the skies with an efficiency that stunned both allies and adversaries alike. Within hours, the majority of Egyptian aircraft, stationed on the ground and caught entirely by surprise, were destroyed or incapacitated, removing the immediate threat of air superiority that might have tipped the scales against Israel. This opening salvo was more than a tactical maneuver. It was a psychological masterstroke, a demonstration that Israel could not only defend itself but also project power in a way that unsettled its neighbors. Soldiers who had trained for months, civilians who had waited anxiously for the outcome, and commanders across the region alike were confronted with a reality they had not anticipated. A smaller, determined nation capable of executing lightning-fast operations with precision and resolve that seemed almost preternatural. The momentum generated by this preemptive strike rippled across multiple fronts. In the Sinai Peninsula, Israeli ground forces moved with astonishing speed, exploiting gaps in enemy defenses and using mobility to outflank larger forces, demonstrating that preparation, coordination, and initiative could compensate for numerical disadvantage. In the north, along the Golan Heights, similar maneuvers neutralized Syrian artillery positions and secured strategic high ground that would prove vital in consolidating territorial gains. The preemptive nature of Israel's assault meant that at no point were its forces reacting defensively. Rather, they dictated the pace of the conflict, forcing opposing armies into a reactive posture and eroding their ability to form cohesive counterattacks. Every advance, every airstrike, and every strategic decision was calibrated not only to achieve immediate military objectives, but also to create a cascading effect of uncertainty and disruption within the opposing ranks. Dayan's leadership during this period reflected a unique combination of courage, tactical brilliance, and a deep understanding of the human element of war. Having grown up in a land frequently under threat, shaped by previous wars of independence, and tempered by personal experiences of injury and loss. He recognized that warfare was as much about the mind as it was about material. His strategy harnessed the morale of his own troops while simultaneously undermining that of the enemy, turning fear and confusion into decisive leverage. Soldiers moved swiftly through deserts and urban centers alike, inspired not merely by orders but by the confidence that their leadership had foreseen every contingency. In effect, the battle unfolded as a carefully choreographed dance of force, speed, and intellect, with Israel asserting control not only over territory but over the narrative of the war itself. The results of this campaign were both immediate and transformative. Within 6 days, Israel had achieved a victory that many had deemed impossible, capturing territory that included the Gaza Strip, the Sinai Peninsula, the West Bank, and the Golan Heights. Beyond the map, the war established Israel's military reputation as a force capable of decisive, preemptive action, altering the strategic calculations of neighboring states for years to come. Yet the significance of the Six-Day War extended beyond mere conquest. It demonstrated the enduring value of planning, initiative, and psychological insight in modern warfare. It was a vivid example of how rapid dominance, when applied with precision and purpose, could produce results far beyond what size or numbers alone might predict, turning a small nation into a formidable actor on the international stage. The human stories embedded within these operations further illuminate the scale and impact of Israel's strategy. Pilots who flew daring sorties against well-defended targets, engineers and logisticians who ensured that tanks and supplies moved without delay, and infantry units that pressed advances under fire all contributed to a narrative that combined bravery with disciplined execution. Each victory, each captured position, was a testament not only to technology and training but to leadership that understood the interplay of morale, timing, and decisive action. Civilians, watching from towns and kibbutzim, experienced the tension, fear, and ultimately relief that come with knowing that the defense of their nation had been entrusted to minds capable of anticipating the unthinkable and acting before the threat could fully materialize. In reflecting on the Six-Day War, it becomes clear that the success of Israel in 1967 was not a simple matter of military might, but of strategy, vision, and the ability to execute a plan that combined speed, overwhelming force, and psychological insight. Moshe Dayan's preemptive strike against Egypt, Syria, and Jordan stands as a defining example of how a nation, guided by foresight and bold leadership, can transform a precarious situation into a stunning victory. For those who study military history, it is a lesson in initiative, decisiveness, and the power of controlling not just the battlefield, but the minds and expectations of one's opponents. The year 1948 marked a watershed moment in the modern history of the Middle East, as the establishment of the State of Israel created not only a homeland for Jewish people after centuries of diaspora and persecution, but also a flashpoint for enduring conflict with neighboring Arab nations. From the moment Israel declared independence, tensions that had simmered under the surface erupted into open confrontation, setting the stage for a series of wars, border disputes, and political maneuverings that would define the region for decades to come. The creation of Israel was celebrated by many as a triumph of resilience and determination. Yet for the surrounding nations Egypt, Jordan, Syria, and others it was perceived as a profound challenge to their territorial claims. National pride, and the balance of power that had existed, however tenuously, under British and French mandates. The immediate aftermath of 1948 was chaotic and intense, with armies mobilizing rapidly and civilians caught between the uncertainties of new borders and the ambitions of emerging states, their lives forever altered by the sweeping forces of history. Israel's initial success in defending its nascent territory was a combination of necessity, strategic planning, and the resolve of individuals who had endured previous waves of conflict and exile. Figures such as Moshe Dayan, who would later become synonymous with Israel's military acumen, had already demonstrated leadership in earlier struggles, gaining experience and respect during the battles that defined the War of Independence. The ability of Israel to organize effective defenses and coordinate limited resources against numerically superior forces was both remarkable and instructive, demonstrating how motivation, training, and adaptability could overcome apparent disadvantages. Yet the victory of 1948 did not end hostilities. Instead, it created a persistent state of tension, a landscape in which every border crossing, every settlement, and every political maneuver carried the potential to ignite renewed conflict. In the years following independence, Israel and its neighbors engaged in a complex interplay of diplomacy, covert operations, and periodic skirmishes, each incident reinforcing the reality that the peace that many hoped for would not come easily. The neighboring Arab states, having failed to prevent the establishment of Israel, focused on bolstering their military capabilities and forging alliances intended to isolate or pressure the new state. Meanwhile, Israel, acutely aware of its vulnerability, invested in intelligence, fortifications, and training programs designed to ensure rapid responsiveness to any threat. This cycle of preparation and counter-preparation created a perpetual atmosphere of alertness, where every military exercise, movement of troops, or public statement could be interpreted as either a warning or a provocation. The tension was not merely strategic, it was psychological, shaping the collective consciousness of leaders and citizens alike, instilling a sense of urgency, vigilance, and the necessity of decisive action at all times. The years leading up to the Six-Day War illustrate how this persistent conflict influenced both political decisions and military strategy. Egypt, under the leadership of Gamal Abdel Nasser, became a central actor in heightening tensions, particularly with actions such as the mobilization of forces in the Sinai Peninsula and the closure of strategic waterways. Jordan, Syria, too, maintained aggressive postures, positioning troops and reinforcing alliances in anticipation of potential conflict. In this environment, the concept of a preemptive strike, a calculated, decisive action to neutralize imminent threats, emerged as not only a military strategy, but a logical response to the constant pressure of hostile neighbors. Israel's leadership understood that delay or hesitation could result in strategic disadvantage, and that maintaining the initiative was critical to survival in a region where hostility was not occasional but persistent, systemic, and deeply rooted in historical grievances. Throughout this period, the interplay of local and global politics further complicated the situation. The Cold War cast long shadows over the region, as both the United States and the Soviet Union sought to influence outcomes, supply arms, and cultivate allies. Israel, while navigating the immediate threats from its neighbors, also had to consider the broader implications of its actions on the world stage, balancing the need for security with the risks of escalating tensions into larger confrontations. This dual awareness of local vulnerability and global scrutiny shaped decisions at every level, reinforcing the strategic imperative to act decisively, anticipate threats, and maintain a capacity for rapid response. The persistent state of conflict was thus not merely a backdrop to Israel's military campaigns but a defining force that influenced policy, leadership, and the very culture of the nation. Civilian life during these years reflected the omnipresence of conflict in ways both profound and intimate. Families learned to navigate uncertainty, communities coordinated defense measures, and a sense of shared purpose emerged from the recognition that national survival required collective commitment. The societal impact of persistent conflict extended beyond immediate security concerns. Shaping educational priorities, economic planning, and social cohesion. Children grew up in a world where military service was expected, where vigilance was part of everyday life, and where stories of previous conflicts served as both cautionary tales and sources of inspiration. The experience of living under continuous threat influenced the character of the population, instilling resilience, adaptability, and a pragmatic understanding of the precariousness of national existence. By the time the Six-Day War arrived in 1967, this persistent conflict had already molded Israel into a state that combined rapid military responsiveness, strategic foresight, and a profound awareness of the psychological dimensions of warfare. The history of confrontation with Arab neighbors had taught the value of preparation, initiative, and the willingness to act decisively, lessons that would be vividly demonstrated in the stunning preemptive operations that characterized the war. The story of Israel between 1948 and 1967 is, therefore, not merely a chronicle of skirmishes or battles but a study in the enduring influence of unresolved tensions, the shaping of national strategy through persistent threat, and the ways in which leadership, courage, and insight can navigate a landscape defined by uncertainty and danger. In examining this period, one sees how persistent conflict became a defining characteristic of the region, influencing military tactics, political decisions, and societal norms. The struggles of those decades were more than historical events. They were formative experiences that prepared Israel for the challenges of the Six-Day War and beyond, embedding lessons in strategy, diplomacy, and resilience that would resonate for generations. It is a story of tension, anticipation, and the complex interplay of fear, ambition, and necessity that shaped the course of a nation and the broader trajectory of the Middle East. The mid-20th century in the Middle East was a period defined by bold political moves, calculated military maneuvers, and the relentless struggle for control over vital economic and strategic assets. None more significant than the Suez Canal, a waterway whose importance transcended borders and symbolized influence over global trade routes. In July 1956, Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser made a move that would reverberate far beyond Cairo when he announced the nationalization of the Suez Canal, a decision that immediately transformed regional politics and international relations alike. For decades, the canal had been a linchpin of maritime commerce, a critical artery connecting the Mediterranean to the Red Sea, allowing ships to bypass the long journey around Africa and facilitating the flow of goods and influence across continents. By asserting sovereign control over the canal, Nasser not only challenged the authority of former colonial powers such as Britain and France, but also directly impacted Israel, whose access to international waters and trade routes was intimately tied to the canal's operation. The decision to nationalize the canal was far from a symbolic gesture. It carried immediate and tangible consequences. Tensions that had already simmered following Israel's declaration of independence in 1948 were magnified, as military posturing intensified on both sides. Egyptian forces moved with heightened alertness along the Sinai Peninsula, while Israel, acutely aware of its vulnerability, reinforced its borders and mobilized strategic reserves. The canal, while primarily an economic asset, became a flashpoint of strategic calculations, a line whose control could dictate the movement of armies and the supply of critical resources. Nasser's action was interpreted not simply as a domestic policy but as a potential threat to Israel's security, heightening anxieties in a region already defined by mutual suspicion and the legacy of previous conflicts. The nationalization demonstrated the extent to which political decisions could rapidly escalate military concerns, illustrating that in the Middle East, economic sovereignty and security were inseparably linked. The ensuing months witnessed an intricate dance of diplomacy. covert planning, and military preparedness. Britain and France, determined to safeguard their interests and reassert influence, entered into secret negotiation, coordinating with Israel to create a scenario that could justify military intervention while minimizing international censure. For Israel, the Suez Canal crisis presented both a strategic challenge and an opportunity. It was a chance to weaken Egyptian military positioning, secure access to vital waterways, and assert regional influence. On October 29, 956, the coordinated campaign began, with Israel launching a rapid offensive into the Sinai, followed by Anglo-French military action aimed at seizing control of the canal and stabilizing what they framed as an international waterway under threat. The conflict, known as the Suez Crisis, was brief but intense, a striking demonstration of how swift, decisive military action could intersect with geopolitics and economic imperatives to shape the course of regional affairs. Despite the initial military success of the coalition, the international response was swift and complex. The United States and the Soviet Union, both wary of colonial overreach and the potential for broader escalation, pressured Britain, France, and Israel to withdraw, highlighting the delicate balance between military action and diplomatic legitimacy. For Israel, however, the operation underscored the effectiveness of preemptive planning, rapid maneuvering, and the exploitation of surprise in achieving tactical objectives, lessons that would directly inform later strategies during the Six-Day War of 1967. The crisis also cemented Nasser's status as a regional leader capable of challenging traditional powers, galvanizing Arab nationalism and heightening the sense of urgency among neighboring states to prepare for potential future confrontations. The nationalization of the Suez Canal had thus transformed a singular economic decision into a catalyst for military posturing. Alliance building, an enduring regional tension, demonstrating that infrastructure and geography could become instruments of both power and conflict. In the decade following the Suez Crisis, the memory of 1956 lingered like a shadow over every strategic calculation. Egyptian forces were rearmed and reorganized, with modern Soviet equipment flowing into the Sinai and beyond, signaling that the next confrontation might be inevitable. Israel, meanwhile, invested in intelligence, training, and strategic planning that emphasized speed, coordination, and the decisive application of force, understanding that in a region marked by persistent tension, preemption could be the difference between survival and disaster. Border incidents, skirmishes, and diplomatic standoffs became frequent, each episode reinforcing the lesson that unresolved disputes and unresolved grievances could quickly escalate into open conflict. The interplay between the Suez Canal, military preparedness, and political leadership illustrated the interconnectedness of seemingly disparate factors. Economic control influenced military strategy, which in turn shaped political decision-making and regional perceptions of power. By 1967, the stage was set for the dramatic confrontation that would become the Six-Day War. Nasser's continued military buildup, combined with alliances with Jordan and Syria and the expulsion of the United Nations emergency force from the Sinai, created a context in which Israel perceived a credible and imminent threat, drawing on the lessons of the Suez Crisis. Israeli leadership, under figures such as Moshe Dayan, recognized the necessity of acting decisively and preemptively. The strategic environment demanded not only tactical skill but also psychological insight, as demonstrating overwhelming force early could destabilize adversaries and tilt the conflict in Israel's favor. The memory of previous confrontations underscored the urgency. The Suez Canal had been a flashpoint, a nexus of strategy, politics, and international attention, and control over the Sinai and surrounding regions could once again determine the outcomes of war. The Suez Canal episode thus becomes more than a historical footnote. It serves as a lens through which to understand the broader dynamics of the Middle East, where control of key infrastructure, national pride, military capability, and political foresight are interwoven. It reveals how a single act of nationalization, combined with subsequent military posturing, could ripple across decades, shaping alliances, prompting rapid military innovation, and embedding a strategic mindset that prioritized preemption, coordination, and decisive action. The crisis of 1956 and the lead-up to 1967 demonstrate that in regions of persistent tension, infrastructure and leadership are not separate from conflict but are central to it, influencing every calculation, maneuver, and decision. In reflecting on these events, it becomes evident that history in the Middle East is not only a story of battles and borders, but also of the intricate interplay between political vision, economic control, and the application of military force, where each action sets the stage for the next chapter in a complex and ongoing saga. In the vast, sun-scorched deserts of North Africa during World War II, a military strategist emerged whose name would be forever etched into the annals of warfare, a man whose combination of daring, speed, and tactical ingenuity earned him both admiration and fear across continents. Erwin Rommel, later known as the Desert Fox, was tasked with leading German and Italian forces against the British in a theatre where the unforgiving landscape itself was as much an adversary as the opposing armies. Unlike the dense battlefields of Europe, North Africa demanded a commander who could navigate not only the shifting sands and extreme climate, but also the logistical complexities of supplying troops and mechanized units across hundreds of miles of desert terrain. Rommel's approach, informed by his early experiences in World War I and honed through rigorous study and personal observation, emphasized flexibility, audacity, and the relentless application of speed and surprise, elements that would define his legendary Blitzkrieg campaigns. Rommel's strategy in North Africa was rooted in the principle of mobility as dominance, using mechanized units to strike swiftly at weak points, envelop enemy formations, and create chaos that paralyzed opposing forces. The Blitzkrieg, or lightning war, was not merely a tactic of overwhelming force, but a philosophy of initiative, coordination, and rapid adaptation to unfolding circumstances. Rommel understood that success depended not solely on the number of troops or tanks but on the ability to think several steps ahead, to anticipate enemy movements, and to exploit any hesitation or miscalculation. From his earliest engagements in the desert, he demonstrated a remarkable capacity to read both terrain and human psychology, predicting where defenders might overcommit or falter, and then executing maneuvers that turned their strengths into vulnerabilities. His reputation grew with each encounter, as the Desert Fox seemed always to be at the right place at the right time, striking with precision before the British could consolidate their defenses. The initial confrontations in Libya showcased Rommel's mastery of combined arms warfare, coordinating infantry, armored divisions, and artillery with remarkable efficiency. He achieved rapid victories that astonished both allies and adversaries. His maneuvers were audacious, often taking risks that others might have deemed reckless, such as advancing deep into enemy territory with supply lines stretched to their limits. Yet these risks frequently yielded spectacular results. The British, initially caught off guard by the speed and unpredictability of his attacks, were forced into a reactive posture, retreating and reorganizing under constant pressure. Rommel's ability to impose a rhythm on the battlefield that dictated the pace of engagement exemplified the essence of his command. Initiative, surprise, and relentless momentum Each victory reinforced the psychological impact of his strategy, demoralizing opposing forces while instilling a sense of invincibility within his own ranks, a hallmark of effective rapid dominance. Despite his early successes, Rommel's campaigns were not without challenges, and the unforgiving desert was as much an opponent as the British forces. Supply shortages, extreme heat, and mechanical failures tested both his leadership and the resilience of his troops. Nevertheless, Rommel turned adversity into advantage, using mobility and improvisation to compensate for limited resources. His daring flanking maneuvers, night attacks, and feints exemplified an understanding that the battlefield was as much about deception and timing as about firepower. By presenting multiple threats simultaneously, he forced the British to divide attention and resources, creating openings that his forces could exploit with devastating effect. The tactical brilliance displayed in these operations demonstrated not only Rommel's genius in conventional warfare, but also his capacity to adapt classic military theory to the unique conditions of desert combat. Blending speed, surprise, and psychological manipulation into an almost seamless strategy. The broader strategic impact of Rommel's North African campaign extended beyond immediate victories. Each advance, each engagement, shaped Allied perceptions of German capabilities and compelled them to adjust their tactics and allocate additional resources to the region. British commanders, including Bernard Montgomery, studied Rommel's methods meticulously, learning to anticipate his movements and devise countermeasures that would eventually blunt the momentum of the Axis forces. The campaign highlighted the interplay between offensive innovation and defensive adaptation, revealing how even a brilliant strategist must contend with evolving conditions. Enemy ingenuity and the limits of logistical support. Rommel's eventual halt before British defences did not diminish his accomplishments. Rather, it underscored the finite constraints within which any commander must operate and the delicate balance between audacity and overextension. Rommel's legacy in North Africa was further solidified by the human dimension of his leadership. He was known for a combination of charisma, strict discipline, and concern for the welfare of his soldiers, earning respect that transcended the usual command dynamic. Troops were inspired not only by his tactical acumen but also by his personal example. His willingness to share in the hardships of the desert, and his decisiveness in moments of crisis. These qualities contributed to cohesion and morale, factors that proved essential in a theater where environmental challenges could as easily defeat armies as the enemy's weapons. The Desert Fox's campaigns thus illustrate a holistic approach to military mastery, integrating planning, execution, psychology, and leadership into a framework capable of achieving rapid, decisive outcomes. By the time Rommel's North African operations concluded, his name had become synonymous with ingenuity, boldness, and the effective application of Blitzkrieg tactics in a complex and unforgiving environment. His successes were tempered by strategic limits, the resilience of the Allies, and the eventual counter-offensives that reclaimed lost ground. Yet his impact on military thought was profound. Lessons drawn from the desert campaigns informed subsequent Allied and Axis planning, influencing approaches to mobility, combined arms coordination, and rapid offensive operations in theaters across the globe. Rommel's North African exploits thus stand as a testament to the power of innovation, daring, and strategic foresight in shaping the course of war, offering enduring insights into the art of leadership under conditions of uncertainty, danger, and relentless challenge. In reflecting on this chapter of history, one sees how the confluence of environment, technology, leadership, and timing can magnify the effects of brilliant strategy. Erwin Rommel's campaigns in North Africa were more than a series of battles. They were a demonstration of how speed, adaptability, and psychological insight can create a force multiplier, enabling smaller or less well-equipped armies to achieve temporary dominance and leave a lasting impression on the conduct of war itself. His story is a vivid illustration of the impact a single military genius can have when audacity meets skill, and when the art of maneuver is applied with precision and daring against both human and natural adversaries. The lessons of warfare are often written in blood, in the bitter experience of defeats as much as in the glory of victories. And few figures in modern military history embodied this principle more clearly than General Colin Powell, whose rise from the son of Jamaican immigrants in the Bronx to the highest echelons of American military and political leadership reflected both personal determination and a profound understanding of the complexities of modern conflict. Powell's career was shaped by formative experiences in Vietnam, where he confronted the brutal realities of guerrilla warfare, the ambiguity of objectives, and the profound consequences of misaligned strategy. In those years, he witnessed firsthand how unclear goals, insufficient preparation, and inadequate public support could turn even a technologically superior military into a beleaguered force struggling against both the enemy and public perception. And these lessons would later crystallize into what became known as the Powell Doctrine, a framework for the decisive application of military power. The Powell Doctrine, while often summarized in terms of overwhelming force, clear objectives, and securing public support, was more than a checklist. It was a philosophy of engagement grounded in the principle that military action must be both strategic and morally coherent. Powell recognized that force alone, no matter how powerful, was insufficient if it lacked a clearly defined political purpose, or if it failed to maintain the confidence of the public whose resources and trust underpinned any military endeavor. He understood that lessons learned in Vietnam, the challenges of protracted conflict, the confusion of unclear objectives, and the human cost of indecision could serve as a blueprint for future operations, enabling the United States to act decisively when national interests were at stake while avoiding the quagmires that had undermined previous campaigns. In this sense, the Powell Doctrine was a synthesis of tactical, strategic, and political insight, integrating battlefield considerations with the imperatives of democratic accountability and long-term policy. Powell's rise through the ranks of the United States Army exemplified the interplay between personal experience and doctrinal development. Early in his career, he embraced the rigorous discipline of the Reserve Officers Training Corps, cultivating both leadership skills and a deep appreciation for the responsibilities of command. His tours in Vietnam were pivotal, exposing him to the harsh realities of combat, the logistical challenges of maneuvering troops under fire, and the psychological pressures faced by soldiers in uncertain and hostile environments. It was in these crucibles that Powell internalized the necessity of clarity in mission objectives, the importance of sufficient force to achieve decisive outcomes, and the imperative of maintaining public trust, all principles that would later underpin his strategic philosophy. Each engagement, each decision, and each observation of the consequences of inadequate preparation contributed to a nuanced understanding of how military power should be applied in a modern democratic society. By the 1980s, Powell had risen to positions of influence that allowed him to apply these lessons on a broader scale, serving in key roles within the Pentagon and as National Security Advisor. He faced the challenge of translating battlefield experience into actionable doctrine that could guide national policy. The geopolitical environment of the Cold War, with its complex array of allies, adversaries, and ideological conflicts, required a framework that balanced military efficacy with strategic restraint. Powell's approach emphasized that any use of force must be carefully calibrated, overwhelming enough to ensure rapid success, and clearly tied to specific political objectives so that the costs incurred were justified and defensible. This approach reflected a synthesis of historical insight, ethical consideration, and practical military planning, demonstrating how individual experience could inform institutional doctrine in ways that shaped national decision-making for decades. The implementation of the Powell Doctrine was most dramatically demonstrated in operations, such as Just Cause in Panama, where overwhelming force was applied to achieve clear objectives within a short time frame, minimizing both military and civilian casualties while maintaining the support of the American public and international observers. Powell's insistence on thorough planning, the concentration of sufficient resources, and the clarity of mission goals ensured that the operation achieved its objectives decisively and efficiently, embodying the principles he had long advocated. These operations showcased the practical efficacy of a doctrine rooted in the hard-won lessons of Vietnam, demonstrating that military genius is not only measured in battlefield tactics but also in the capacity to integrate experience, strategy, and policy into coherent action. Beyond individual campaigns, the Powell Doctrine influenced broader military and political thinking, setting a standard for how the United States approached conflicts in subsequent decades. It emphasized that military engagement should never be an impulsive or isolated act but a calculated endeavor, informed by a comprehensive understanding of objectives, risks, and consequences. Powell's philosophy reinforced the idea that the ethical and strategic dimensions of warfare are inseparable. Decisive military action is most effective when it is guided by clear purpose, adequate preparation, and the confidence of the public whose support is essential for sustaining national security initiatives. The doctrine became a touchstone for policymakers, shaping discussions around intervention, force projection, and the conditions under which military power should be employed. In examining Powell's contribution to modern military thought, it becomes evident that his genius lay not in individual acts of battlefield heroism alone, but in the creation of a framework that translated experience into enduring strategic wisdom. By codifying principles that emphasize preparation, clarity, sufficiency of force, and public accountability, Powell provided a roadmap for how nations could wield military power responsibly and effectively in complex, high-stakes environments. His legacy is a testament to the value of reflection, learning, and disciplined application of knowledge. It illustrates that the art of warfare is as much about foresight, planning, and principle as it is about immediate tactical brilliance, and that enduring success depends on the seamless integration of lessons learned into both doctrine and action. Through the lens of Powell's life and career, one can trace the evolution of modern military strategy, from the chaotic, morally ambiguous engagements of Vietnam to the disciplined, decisive operations that characterized later American interventions. His development of the Powell Doctrine demonstrates how individual insight, when combined with rigorous analysis and practical application, can shape the conduct of war and the exercise of national power. It serves as a reminder that true military genius is measured not only by victories achieved on the battlefield, but by the capacity to translate experience into structured principles that guide action, reduce unnecessary suffering, and achieve objectives with clarity, precision, and strategic foresight. In the tense and turbulent years leading up to World War II, Japan found itself grappling with the constraints of geography, resource scarcity, and a rapidly shifting global balance of power, challenges that demanded bold strategic thinking and decisive action. Within this crucible, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto emerged as a visionary military leader, a man whose deep understanding of both technology and human psychology would shape some of the most dramatic and consequential operations of the Pacific Theater. Born into a prominent family with samurai lineage, Yamamoto combined rigorous academic study, an early fascination with naval history, and first-hand observation of foreign military practices. particularly during his time in the United States, to develop a perspective that blended innovation, audacity, and meticulous planning. By the late 1930s, as Japan's ambitions for expansion collided with the economic and military interests of Western powers, Yamamoto became convinced that a decisive, preemptive strike against the United States could provide the strategic leverage necessary to secure Japan's objectives, particularly its access to vital oil supplies and its broader imperial ambitions in the Pacific. Yamamoto's planning for the Pearl Harbor attack reflected a sophisticated application of rapid dominance, a doctrine designed to overwhelm an adversary quickly, striking at their critical assets to demoralize them and gain an immediate advantage. Unlike a conventional engagement that relied on gradual attrition, the Pearl Harbor operation aimed to incapacitate the U.S. Pacific Fleet in a single, coordinated blow, destroying battleships, airfields, and support infrastructure before American forces could mount an effective response. Yamamoto recognized the high stakes involved. Failure would not only jeopardize Japan's strategic position, but also provoke the full military might of a nation whose industrial capacity and resolve he deeply respected. His plans accounted for meticulous timing, the coordination of multiple aircraft carriers and squadrons, and the element of surprise, understanding that even minor miscalculations could transform a daring strike into a catastrophic misstep. The attack on December 7, 1941, was executed with stunning precision and tactical brilliance. Over 180 Japanese aircraft descended on the harbor in waves, delivering a devastating blow to battleships, cruisers, and air installations. The human and material toll was enormous. Ships were sunk or severely damaged, and thousands of American servicemen lost their lives. From a purely tactical perspective, the strike demonstrated the effectiveness of rapid dominance. Yamamoto had orchestrated a coordinated assault that left the defenders unprepared and reeling. The initial success created a momentary sense of triumph for the Japanese command and cemented Yamamoto's reputation as a master of operational planning, a man capable of translating vision into reality under conditions of immense complexity and risk. Yet, the tactical brilliance of Pearl Harbor belied deeper strategic vulnerabilities. While the attack succeeded in destroying much of the battleship fleet, it failed to eliminate American aircraft carriers, which were at sea during the assault, and it did not achieve lasting disruption of use, industrial capacity or morale. Yamamoto, who had anticipated that a display of overwhelming force might compel the United States to negotiate or even withdraw from the Pacific, found instead that the attack galvanized American public opinion, uniting a previously divided nation and triggering a level of mobilization that Japan had not fully anticipated. The psychological impact of the attack, while initially shocking, ultimately strengthened the resolve of the United States, setting in motion a counteroffensive of unprecedented scale and intensity that would alter the course of the war. The aftermath of Pearl Harbor highlighted the limits of rapid dominance when divorced from long-term strategic considerations. Yamamoto's planning had excelled in operational execution, in the precision of timing, coordination, and immediate destruction of enemy assets, yet it underestimated the resilience, industrial capacity, and strategic response of the United States. The initial shock was followed by a sustained campaign of mobilization, shipbuilding, and technological innovation that transformed American power projection in the Pacific, leading to pivotal battles such as Midway and Guadalcanal, where the initiative gradually shifted away from the Japanese forces. Yamamoto, despite his genius, became increasingly aware that operational victories could not substitute for comprehensive strategic planning, and that even the most audacious acts required integration with broader political and economic realities. Yamamoto's personal qualities further shaped both the execution and perception of the Pearl Harbor operation. He was known for his meticulous attention to detail, his insistence on thorough training and discipline, and his ability to inspire confidence among subordinates. His understanding of aviation, carrier-based operations, and the interplay of air and naval power allowed him to innovate in ways that transformed naval warfare. Yet his foresight regarding American industrial might revealed a prescient understanding of strategic risk. In private correspondence and conversations, Yamamoto is reported to have expressed reluctance about provoking a protracted conflict with the United States, recognizing that Japan's long-term capacity to sustain such a war was limited. The Pearl Harbor attack, therefore, represents a tension between tactical brilliance and strategic miscalculation, demonstrating how the effective application of rapid dominance on the battlefield can produce immediate success while failing to secure lasting strategic advantage. Ultimately, the Pearl Harbor attack stands as a testament to both the power and the limitations of military genius. Yamamoto's orchestration of the strike exemplified operational excellence, audacity, and innovative use of emerging technology. Yet the failure to anticipate the broader consequences transformed a tactical triumph into a strategic challenge for Japan. The rapid dominance achieved in those hours over the American fleet could not offset the mobilization and resolve it inspired, illustrating the critical interplay between immediate military action and long-term strategic planning. In this, Yamamoto's legacy is as much a cautionary tale as it is a celebration of skill, demonstrating that even the most brilliant planners must contend with the unpredictable dynamics of warfare. Human response, and the inexorable momentum of industrialized nations committed to defending their interests. Reflecting on the Pearl Harbor operation through the lens of history, one observes a complex interplay of innovation, risk, and consequence. Yamamoto's vision, the precision of execution, and the dramatic impact of the attack highlight the capacity of a single leader to shape events on a massive scale. Yet the ultimate failure to translate tactical dominance into lasting strategic victory underscores the enduring lesson that warfare is as much about foresight, resource management, and the adaptability of one's adversaries as it is about immediate battlefield success. The story of Pearl Harbor remains a vivid illustration of how rapid dominance can achieve breathtaking initial results while simultaneously revealing the limits of operational triumph in the broader theater of global conflict. Across the turbulent landscapes of the 20th century, warfare evolved at an unprecedented pace, shaped by technology, ideology, and the ambitions of extraordinary individuals whose mastery of strategy and human psychology would leave indelible marks on history. Among these figures, 4 military leaders Moshe Dayan, Erwin Rommel, Colin Powell, and Isoroku Yamamoto stood out not merely for their tactical brilliance but for a shared genius in exploiting speed, surprise, and overwhelming force to dominate their adversaries, each in a unique theater of conflict that revealed both the potential and limits of rapid dominance. Their stories, while separated by geography and decades, converge in the lesson that decisive action, when executed with precision and audacity, can reshape the outcomes of wars and the fates of nations, yet always carries the weight of strategic foresight, human cost, and the unpredictable variables of history. Moshe Dayan's rise to prominence within the Israeli Defense Forces exemplified the transformative power of preemptive action and rapid mobilization. Born in Palestine under the Ottoman Empire, Dayan's early experiences in guerrilla warfare and his later participation in Israel's wars of independence forged both his tactical skills and his reputation as a leader capable of swift, decisive strikes. By June 1967, as regional tensions escalated with Egypt, Syria, and Jordan massing forces and closing strategic waterways, Dayan understood that Israel's survival depended on a preemptive demonstration of military dominance. The Six-Day War became a testament to his application of speed and surprise. In the opening hours, The Israeli Air Force destroyed the majority of enemy aircraft on the ground, crippling opposing air power before it could respond. The subsequent rapid ground advances, characterized by relentless momentum and coordinated maneuvers, allowed Israel to secure strategic territories in Egypt, Syria, and Jordan, fundamentally altering the balance of power in the Middle East. Dayan's brilliance lay not merely in planning but in the execution of overwhelming force at precisely the right moment, leaving opponents disoriented and unable to mount an effective defense. Half a world away. Erwin Rommel, known as the Desert Fox, demonstrated a parallel mastery in North Africa during World War II. Rommel's campaigns against the British in Libya and Egypt showcased the dramatic impact of rapid mobile warfare, exploiting both mechanized units and the vast expanses of desert terrain to outflank and surprise enemy forces. With calculated audacity, he employed Blitzkrieg tactics in an environment where speed and adaptability were paramount, seizing opportunities with remarkable decisiveness and compelling opposing forces to retreat under constant pressure. Yet Rommel's campaigns also underscored the interplay between tactical genius and strategic limitation. Despite initial successes, logistical constraints and the determined resistance of the British under Bernard Montgomery eventually halted his advances, illustrating that even overwhelming force and surprise must be coupled with sustainable strategy and resource planning to achieve lasting victories. Colin Powell, drawing lessons from his formative experiences in Vietnam, translated the principles of rapid dominance into a doctrine that emphasized not just battlefield effectiveness but strategic clarity and ethical application. The Powell Doctrine advocated overwhelming force, clear objectives, and public support as prerequisites for military action, synthesizing decades of observation into a framework that guided American engagements in the late 20th century. Operations such as Just Cause in Panama and the Gulf War demonstrated the power of these principles. Coordinated, overwhelming military operations achieved decisive outcomes with minimized casualties, reflecting the calculated application of speed, surprise, and concentrated force. Powell's genius lay in understanding that dominance is as much about perception, preparation, and political legitimacy as it is about raw firepower, and that effective leadership requires integrating lessons from history into actionable doctrine that anticipates the reactions of both allies and adversaries. Isoroku Yamamoto's orchestration of the Pearl Harbor attack provides another lens on the application of speed and surprise to achieve rapid dominance, though with a more ambiguous strategic outcome. Yamamoto meticulously coordinated a complex, multi-wave aerial strike designed to incapacitate the U.S. Pacific Fleet in a matter of hours, achieving a tactical shock of extraordinary scale. The precision, audacity, and operational brilliance of the attack exemplified the principles of overwhelming force. Yet the failure to anticipate the long-term mobilization and industrial capacity of the United States transformed an immediate success into a strategic challenge for Japan. Yamamoto's experience highlights the dual-edged nature of rapid dominance. While speed and surprise can yield spectacular results on the battlefield, their ultimate value is contingent on integration with broader strategic considerations, including logistics, political consequences, and the adversary's capacity for recovery. Taken together, the experiences of Dayan, Rommel, Powell, and Yamamoto illuminate a shared thread: the capacity to execute rapid, overwhelming, and unexpected action can decisively tilt the scales of conflict. Yet such brilliance is inseparable from the broader context in which it is applied. Each leader leveraged speed and surprise not merely as tactical tools, but as instruments of psychological dominance, undermining enemy morale and compelling adversaries to react under duress. Their victories and setbacks alike reveal that the art of rapid dominance requires not only audacity and operational excellence, but also foresight, adaptability, and an understanding of both human and structural factors that define the theater of war. Moreover, these leaders illustrate how the principles of warfare evolve across time and space. From the deserts of North Africa to the jungles of Vietnam, the urban battlegrounds of the Middle East, and the naval expanse of the Pacific, while the technologies and contexts differed, the core dynamics of decisive action momentum, surprise, and overwhelming force remained remarkably consistent, reinforcing the timeless lesson that success in war depends on the ability to act swiftly and coherently, shaping events before opponents can respond effectively. At the same time, their stories underscore the enduring importance of strategic thinking beyond immediate tactical gains, reminding us that even the most brilliant execution must be tempered by awareness of broader objectives. Sustainability and long-term consequences. In reflecting on these four military leaders, it becomes evident that their mastery of speed, surprise, and overwhelming force not only defined their individual campaigns, but also influenced subsequent generations of strategists, planners, and soldiers who study their methods to understand how to achieve rapid dominance while mitigating risk. Their legacies highlight the interplay between tactical ingenuity and strategic insight, demonstrating that true military genius lies in the integration of immediate operational effectiveness with foresight, adaptability, and an unflinching grasp of the broader forces at play in human conflict. Through their combined experiences, we see a portrait of warfare as a dynamic interplay of mind, machine, and morale, where the ability to act decisively and with overwhelming presence can change the course of history, yet always within the constraints and contingencies that define the human condition in war. As we reflect on the extraordinary careers of Moshe Dayan, Erwin Rommel, Colin Powell, Isoroku Yamamoto, a clear pattern emerges. Each of these military leaders harnessed speed, surprise, and overwhelming force to seize the initiative in ways that reshaped battles, altered the course of wars, and left lasting impressions on the study of military strategy. Their campaigns reveal not only the dazzling possibilities of decisive action, but also the profound responsibilities and risks that come with wielding such power. From Dayan's lightning preemptive strikes in the Six-Day War, which secured Israel's survival and redefined the geopolitical balance in the Middle East, to Rommel's audacious desert offensives that outmaneuvered British forces and demonstrated the effectiveness of Blitzkrieg tactics in open terrain, we witness how operational brilliance can yield spectacular results when timing, preparation, and morale converge in perfect harmony. Powell's carefully codified doctrine, informed by the lessons of Vietnam, illustrates that the principles of rapid dominance are not limited to the battlefield alone, but extend to strategic planning, public support, and ethical considerations, emphasizing that the judicious application of overwhelming force can achieve objectives with clarity and decisiveness while minimizing unnecessary suffering. Yamamoto's daring assault on Pearl Harbor further exemplifies the dramatic power of surprise and concentrated action, though it also serves as a sobering reminder that tactical victories must be weighed against long-term strategic realities, including industrial capacity, national resilience, and the political consequences that unfold in the wake of bold military operations. Together, these four figures demonstrate that shock and awe, or rapid dominance, is a double-edged sword. It can produce immediate, almost breathtaking victories, but it also carries risks that extend far beyond the battlefield. A successful strike can demoralize an enemy and create momentum, yet it may provoke unexpected responses, escalate conflicts, or even catalyze innovations in counter-strategy that neutralize initial gains. History shows that the art of warfare is as much about foresight, judgment, and understanding human nature as it is about speed, firepower, and maneuver. These leaders remind us that decisive action must be carefully aligned with larger strategic objectives and political realities, because a brilliantly executed operation, if untempered by prudence, can lead to unintended consequences or even strategic setbacks. The enduring significance of their strategies also lies in the lessons they provide for future generations of military planners, leaders, and even policymakers. By studying Dayan's preemptive precision, Rommel's mobile ingenuity, Powell's doctrine-driven approach, and Yamamoto's audacious strikes, we gain insight into the dynamic interplay between operational innovation and strategic foresight. We learn that military genius is not defined solely by battlefield victories, but by the ability to anticipate enemy responses, manage resources effectively, maintain morale, and integrate tactical actions into broader political, economic, and social contexts. These leaders' experiences teach us that power, when wielded skillfully, can produce extraordinary outcomes, but it must always be balanced with wisdom, foresight, and a clear understanding of potential consequences. In the modern world, where conflicts are increasingly complex and the consequences of rapid action can extend far beyond national borders, the lessons from these military masterminds remain strikingly relevant. The principles of speed, surprise, and overwhelming force continue to inform strategies in both conventional and unconventional warfare, but their effectiveness depends as much on careful planning, intelligence, and ethical considerations as on technological superiority or numerical advantage. The stories of Dayan, Rommel, Powell, and Yamamoto also underscore the human dimension of warfare. Leadership, courage, creativity, and the capacity to make difficult decisions under pressure are indispensable in translating strategic concepts into tangible results. As we conclude this journey through the lives and legacies of these four remarkable figures, it becomes clear that their achievements and miscalculations alike offer a profound commentary on the nature of military power. They show us that rapid dominance is not merely a method of engagement, but a lens through which we can understand the broader consequences of armed conflict, the interplay between tactics and strategy, and the enduring influence of leadership on history. By studying their triumphs and challenges, we gain a richer appreciation for the delicate balance between audacity and prudence, force and restraint, planning and improvisation, and the enduring impact of choices made in the heat of conflict. Thank you so much for watching and taking the time to explore the remarkable strategies and legacies of these military leaders. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you do not miss future stories where history, strategy, and human ingenuity intersect in fascinating ways. Your support helps us continue to bring these insights to life and connect past lessons with today's world. From all of us here, we wish you a restful night and sweet dreams. And may your curiosity and inspiration continue to grow as you explore the lessons of history. Good night.